Pop Culture Pastor.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another Pop Culture Pastor Watch Along, the show where we discuss everything from post-apocalyptic heartbreak to bears who make poor life choices. Oh, did you want to say something about the bear again?
No, I was going to say, is this Curtis or Viper?
Okay, right off the top, Curtis and Viper, is that like this reality's version of Lethal Weapon? Is that what you think when you hear it? Because I think Lethal Weapon series.
Either that or Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Okay, you're going classic.
I am.
Classic. This episode 3 of Last of Us Season 2 will not leave you dry-eyed. Still a lot of emotions going on. We've got grief. We've got civic debate. And we got a whole lot of questionable decisions. That's why we're here, right, Cody?
It is.
This is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs, as I said. My name's Dave. Cody is here.
In person.
With notes.
For once.
And we are going to recap Season 2, Episode 3 of Last of Us, called The Path, Cody. But before we get to The Path, we start with a look at Jackson post-battle. And it's the infected are piled up and burning. It looks like a very hellish landscape.
I don't know if it's safe to be standing near all those burning bodies.
I watched so many zombie post-apocalyptic style stories that I'm unclear just how dead is dead for the zombies. These appear to be some of the more vulnerable zombies we see in these type of stories, as in like they're very human. They're very like once you shoot them in the right place or once they're dead, they're dead.
Yes.
No jump scares.
Other zombie movies or shows, oh, you gotta absolutely stab them in the head.
Yeah, you got to get them in the brain, otherwise they're still coming.
Yes.
Yeah. These appear to be very vulnerable. There's just lots of them. But I was kind of half waiting for one of the burning ones to poke its head up and like, they're not out of it yet, Cody. No, but they were. And that's where we start. And it's interesting to put that right at the beginning of the episode, considering we're about to hit a time jump almost immediately, but that they wanted us to see that. They wanted us to see, I think, the aftermath and that very hellish view and where we're going. We pick up right where we left off. Joel's death is still fresh
in my heart and mind.
Oh, right. Gosh, such a hard episode for everyone last week. I don't know if you're on many of the groups online.
I am not.
Oh man, there's quite a bit of chatter going on. And there was a bit more of fatalistic type fans. Like, so there's the game fans who knew this was coming.
Yes.
Even if maybe it came a little bit quicker than they thought. And then there's like the non-game people who are just like, I'm done. You took out Pedro, and I'm done, Cody.
I mean, I thought I would be closer to that, but I'm not. And so my wife, we didn't watch episode 2 together, and she got spoiled on what would happen. And so then she's like, I need to rewatch all of season 1 and season 2 to prepare myself for this. And rewatching season 1 with her, I don't even know if Pedro's death is in the top 5 tragic, heartbreaking moments.
Right. Yeah. That episode last week was very good. I thought it was very well done. But of the moment it happened, and I am not a game player, but it just seemed like this was going to happen.
Yes.
There was an inevitability to it all, where, especially when they show us how good Jackson's doing. Oh, it's like they're a real town again in the old world. And you're just like, yeah, in every post-apocalyptic thing I've ever watched or read, that's the calm before the storm. They're about to get decimated.
Yes. I feel there was just too much going on in that episode that, like, Joel's kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, I think there's something about that too. And I think there is something about it being rushed, like you said in the pod last week, the watch-along pod. So his death is still fresh, and we get Tommy, who gets the grim job of cleaning his brother's body. I thought this scene was very effective.
Yes.
It's very it's a very honorable respect thing to do. Maybe in a classic sense. I don't think we think about that much anymore.
We have morticians, Dave.
Yeah, we have people that do this for us, but in the old world sense, which they're in. I mean, when the foundations of society break down, they're immediately back in this old world, and he gets to clean his brother's body. And what results is this amazingly effective scene. The moment with the watch is heart-wrenching. The watch is broken and scuffed, and it kind of symbolizes what's been lost from the very beginning, right?
Yes.
And so I kind of dig the focus on the watch in this episode, and we'll talk more about that later. But we hear Tommy whisper, "Give Sarah my love." Sarah, of course, is Joel's daughter who died in the original, the night it all went down.
And when I had beef with Tommy.
You've been beef with Tommy because Tommy was immature.
He was. And literally, Joel could have been at home with his daughter when all this happened. Instead, he's picking Tommy up out of jail.
Yeah. And yeah, give Sarah my love. If you didn't feel that, I mean, that was like the emotional crux of the episode for me. But if you didn't feel it, I don't know. Maybe you don't have a soul.
Zombie.
It's a powerful scene. It reminds us of the weight that Joel was always carrying.
Yes.
Cody, we get such an intimate look at the grieving of Tommy in this scene. Do you think that's intentional? Are we meant to see maybe healthy grieving before we see unhealthy grieving?
Potentially that, but it also shows how these characters knew Joel. And for Tommy, he knew as soon as Sarah died, there was a big chunk of him that was gone. Tess dying, there's a chunk of him that's gone. The only thing that he really is living for is Ellie. And he feels conflicted about the things that he's done in his past. Hence why he was seeing the therapist, Gail. For him, I think it's more of, Joel, you're not in pain anymore. You're going to be reunited with your daughter. Life's going to be a little bit better for you.
Yeah. And yes, he mentioned Gail returns in this episode, played by the wonderful Catherine O'Hara. Why is she so far down on this list?
Because she is there for some crucial scenes, but she's not there for the beginning scenes.
I don't care, IMDb. She's Catherine O'Hara. She deserves top billing. Maybe right under Pedro.
Pedro was removed from the credits, and that's when the waterworks started for my wife. This episode.
The end part where the spores come up out of the ground, and it's usually two. One Pedro shaped or one Bella shaped.
Yep.
Yeah. Nope. That was pain. And speaking of pain, we get the moment in the hospital where Ellie regains consciousness, and they're trying to keep her calm. It's not going to work, and she just starts screaming, which kind of indicates that mentally she's still there. She's still in that room. She's still watching Joel get killed in front of her eyes. And I think that scene, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that scene is meant to be like she is highly wounded, like maybe PTSD stuff. We'll get to that later. I have kind of a theory, but what did you think of that?
Oh, there's definitely going to be some post-traumatic stress from that, considering for the past 5 or 6 years, Joel has been a father figure for her and has been trying to be mentoring and protecting and nurturing. And she also is fully aware that before that room, the cabin scene, she quite literally, the last thing that she had said to him was yelling at the ballroom and being a jerk face.
Yeah. Yeah. And she even mentions later on in the episode, I should have talked to him when he was sitting out on the front porch, but she didn't, which apparently is a change from the game. Apparently they do talk when she comes home from the New Year's Eve ball, whatever.
They did change quite a bit from the game with Abby and with kind of that last interaction.
Yeah. She screams, she's in pain. Then we get the credits and the sad ending to the credits. And then immediately we get rebuilding and kind of cheery music, with the 3 months later graphic, and we're meant to see that things are just doing rosy. But it's kind of a great bit of contrasting by the director, because you quickly find out, like, oh, no. There's much under the surface that is not going rosy.
Well, I mean, essentially, it's kind of like after a natural disaster that, a couple months later, you can definitely see progress has been made, but there's still all the trauma that is experienced by all the residents. There's still all the small things that were lower on the priority list that need fixed, and it's going to take years to fully recover.
But it does show, like you said, after a disaster in our reality, the connection that humans have in that moment to be like, hey, let's band together even among our differences, and we really show this strong connection. And I think that was meant to be the cheeriness that is shown there, that, like, yes, even though they've absorbed quite this hit, that they have a connection of togetherness, which Ellie is going to try and use later on. Ellie is still healing both physically and emotionally. And what does she get? She gets Gail, played by the wonderful Catherine O'Hara, as we mentioned, the town therapist, who shows up to give. She's got to be the one that releases her, essentially.
Which is interesting.
It is, isn't it? Is that just for Ellie, or is that a town thing? Because it seems like it may be just for Ellie, because she's a loose cannon. She's Martin Riggs. She's Mel Gibson.
Yes. I do think that maybe to the extent that it's an Ellie specific thing, but Gail talks about that she's been busy nonstop since the attack.
Yeah. I do appreciate we made that Lethal Weapon connection last week. And I do appreciate that, like, that's a big part of the Lethal Weapon series, that Mel Gibson's character, Martin Riggs, is always like butting heads with the police officer therapist lady. And so,
yes.
And the back and forth in this scene between Ellie and Gail is like almost verbatim for how that trope goes. Oh, I guess I should have left Joel off the hook. If only I could have done that before, but I guess now I got to let me off the hook.
Ellie, you're such a liar.
She's pretending to be fine. She's pretending to be okay, but she's not fooling anyone, especially not Gail. Cody, she clearly has been traumatized. Do you think that they're going to explore this? Like, are we done with this? Is she really past it? Or are we going to see this rear its ugly head somewhere down the line?
Well, I mean, this episode where it ends up, you definitely get the perspective that it's not over. Mm-hmm. And so it definitely is going to come up again, but whether it's constructively or not so constructively, that's the question.
Yeah, we do get some interesting back and forth with Gail that's not just the tropish back and forth. There's some real information here, and Gail is very subtly, through her work, trying to get to the truth of what happened with Eugene, her husband.
I was a little disappointed with Gail expressing the last thing that Pedro had told her.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
like, this doesn't seem ethical, Gail.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. She's very sneakily trying to get to the bottom of this, and to which Ellie deflects it rather professionally, rather perfectly, and, you know, goes into the whole, I guess I should have let him off the hook.
Yep.
But again, I can't help but wonder if we're going to get a flashback at some point, because there's a look in her eye. They show a close up of her face. It looks like Ellie she's aware. I think she's already aware of what Joel did in rescuing her. I think at some point they had this out and we haven't seen it yet, but that's just me. Tommy leaves the watch and gun to Ellie. So Ellie's dealing with Joel's death in her own way. But Tommy, you know, he's the one who had the watch, and he's the one left with this burden that he's really dealing with. Grief isn't linear, and we kind of see that through Tommy working through his sorrow by doing what Joel taught him to do, which is survival.
Yes.
And that conversation comes up here between Tommy and Ellie later on in the show. Right now, Ellie goes back to the house, and the box is sitting there on the bed, and it's the watch on top of a cloth, to which Ellie goes right through to the gun that's on the bottom. In a way, when I'm watching this, it's like Tommy saying, hey, I'm giving you something to remember him by. But Ellie, she's not ready to face it. And the symbolism of her brushing aside the watch, which we've already said is like an important symbol in this episode of the memories of what we've lost. And she focuses on the gun. It's a beautiful bit of symbolism that I think her grief has narrowed her into this singular, and yes, even, I'm going to say it, a selfish focus. Well, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and then I'll explain the word selfish there.
So we know the watch has some strong significance. I don't know if it is crystal clear and obvious to Ellie that, like, oh, this is the last second birthday gift item that I got from my daughter that died.
To be fair, I'm talking about from the audience's point of view. I'm okay with, Ellie maybe not knowing the significance of the watch.
And also for her, Ellie, the gun being Joel's gun has significance because they're gunning their way across America.
Yeah.
And he taught her how to shoot and all that fun stuff. And so he, like that, I could see that being more sentimental to Ellie. That like, oh, this is Joel's gun. Joel was a survivalist when I knew him. Joel was shooting left and right.
And I'm probably reading too much into it, Cody. But I do wonder if they were trying to use symbolism there to maybe highlight the inherent, like, kind of selfish nature of revenge. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Ellie doesn't have to know the significance. I think it's there for the audience. But let's look at it from Abby's context.
Abby can kick rocks.
Well, right. And I'm betting that the people that were with Abby they're going to have repercussions for just being there because of Abby's mission, because of what Abby did when they were all trying to talk her out of it. Like, I'm just guessing, Cody, that at some point down the line in this story, those people around her are going to have repercussions and consequences for all of this. And that's kind of what I mean, are Abby's actions aren't going to go well for the rest of the group. Likewise, what are the odds that Dina is going to make it through this unscathed?
Probably very low.
You know, what if Tommy goes after her or at some point goes to try and help her? I'm sticking to my revenge as a spiral staircase that only goes down. And as it does so, it picks up new victims on the way. And new victims means new revenge. It's just a cycle of retaliation.
Eventually, someone, if we go an eye for an eye, everyone but the last one will probably be blind. So
yeah,
you just got to make it to the end, baby.
It's like Call of Duty out here, man.
It is.
Ellie goes back to the house. You know, she's grieving. We get this wonderful scene of her in the closet, you know, kind of almost enveloping herself in Joel's clothing as she's crying. And I thought that was something that was very realistic for people who've gone through grief, lost a parent, lost a spouse, the smell of their clothing, of who they were, just kind of on those clothes. And I thought that was very poignant and powerful.
I wonder if they still have Tide.
In the apocalypse?
I would imagine that'd be one of the last things stolen.
Yeah. You think you'd find caches of it, warehouses?
Yep.
But can you get the washer to work? That's the question. It's been like 20 years. They still make working washers.
In Jackson, they do.
Maybe. Dina shows up, brings cookies for a peace offering because she has something to tell Ellie that she knows Ellie is not going to react well to. That for this 3 months she has kept from her, that she has more information than she let on about the people. She knows most of their names and where they're from, which results in immediately we see kind of Ellie's maybe triggers being a little bit more powerful right now. She kind of flies off the handle on who is her best friend in the entire world at this point.
She's so Mel Gibson.
And Dina kind of shuts it down in a very friendly, soft way, which I appreciated. And it ends with her saying to Ellie, I loved him too, you know. So Dina knows a lot about them. This group, she's got some hearsay she heard from Eugene when he was a Firefly, and then she says, so now what? And I like this scene because there's some beautiful tenderness between Ellie and Dina, but it's complicated, right?
They eventually share cookies.
Yeah. There's these other feelings that complicate the whole thing, especially from Ellie's end. But Dina kind of gives clues that she's got some stronger feelings as well. And Dina knows exactly where this is all headed. But she also knows Ellie isn't thinking straight. So Dina knows that she can be the brains that keeps Ellie alive.
Someone needs to.
Because Ellie was literally just going to leave town with a backpack.
Well, she's a loose cannon.
Yes. Yeah. But again, there's the trope, right? So in all those 80s buddy cop movies where one of them was crazy, they were always suffering from loss and they were near suicidal in their actions. Not like I'm going to kill myself, but I'm going to put myself in situations where I might likely lose my life.
You got to risk it for the biscuit if you're an 80s buddy cop film.
You do not, narrator, you do not risk it for the biscuit. Ellie goes to Tommy and they have, again, this kind of powerful, poignant back and forth because Tommy knows what's up too. Tommy knows exactly what Ellie wants to do. And it's when Ellie says, Joel would have been halfway to Seattle by the next day. That's when Tommy kind of
snaps,
puts her in her place and says, no, he wouldn't. And then reminds her he was my brother and I know him. Again, you're not the only one grieving here.
We only go after the living. The dead, we just move on.
Was that an actual line? That sounds like a Walking Dead line.
Well, that's what he basically got at was like, if I had been kidnapped, Joel would have been halfway there. But if I was dead, we move on. We're
back to survival mode.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's probably right. He tells Ellie, we buried our dead 10 miles south of town if you want to visit him. And she says, when we're on our way to Seattle.
Because we have to have a town hall meeting.
Yeah. But first we get these weird, I kind of wrote in my notes, weird Robin Hood people.
Okay. So I had in my notes, M. Night's The Village. But they all had Glasgow smiles.
Yeah, that was interesting. All of this, apparently these are characters from the video game. For me and my daughter who are watching the show, we're just like, what the heck is this? I end up calling them the Merry Men after the Robin Hood stuff because that was my first impulse. But yeah, the men are bald. They've all got these scars, the Joker scars up their cheeks from their mouth. And let's talk about them for a second. They're fleeing a war. This is what we know about them just from the little conversation he's having with his daughter. Do we know if they're better than the wolves? I mean, the show seems to bend over backwards to try to paint them as kind of agrarian, kind of peaceful and just running away. Although I have since come to find out in my studying for this episode that that's maybe not the way they are in the game.
Well, they definitely are religious fanatics because you do get that dialogue on the trail or the path that, well, the prophet said this.
Yeah.
The prophet's eternal, but like her words, not the actual physical form, and like going into some unique things. And we have hammers.
Yeah. My only issue with this, because what we get is that when Ellie and Dina kind of stumble on the massacre of these people,
spoilers
for this episode, we see like it makes the stakes go higher, of course, because we realize the WLF is dangerous. And it's kind of another added, boy, is anyone safe in a world this volatile type feeling. And it's coupled with, is anyone really good anymore? Are there good guys? But what it seems like the show really wants to do here that I was kind of disappointed with is make sure the viewer knows that the WLF is like very, very, very bad news. And what I want to ask you, Cody, is do we like this? Because I'm a much bigger fan of blurred lines of good and evil that kind of resembles our world of reality. And I think that when we make the antagonist like this mustache twirling evil, we do it to make ourselves feel better. We want to believe that all of us firmly land on the good side and everyone who thinks differently lands on the evil side. And I think it's comforting which is why I love the depiction of Abby as having a pretty clear and understandable motive.
So I'll go with a real world example. You got dictators out there.
Sure.
And if this is kind of a fascist authoritarian mindset, I don't have any qualms with it.
Well,
but at the same time, we are presuming that it's the wolves, especially since the whistling people said it's wolves. But there's something towards the end of this show that made me question, like, maybe Dina knows more than what she's laying on.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when we do come upon the massacre, and Ellie's like, do you think the wolves did this? And like she pauses for a long time and is like, yep. And so
Ooh, interesting. I didn't notice that.
I feel like Eugene either told her more about the wolves that she hasn't told Ellie, or there's something else going on. But
Yeah. Let's go back in time a little bit. We got a little ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to Jesse training Ellie. We get this little scene of Ellie coming out punching. Clearly her 3 months of convalescing not so much impacting her training, because she's still punching hard. Ellie's grief, though, is we're meant to see is manifesting in anger, and we all know how that goes. And you can't just bury your feelings and hope they'll stay down. And they're talking about what she's going to say to the council, as Jesse is on the council now.
we lost some good people.
Yeah, we lost a lot of good men out there, as they would say.
Yep.
And Jesse's on the council, and he instructs her. He's like, listen, you can't just go in there and wing it because you're angry. And people don't vote for angry.
They don't. Although there was an angry gent that I nearly voted for.
Let's just go to the council meeting. First off, Scott wants to talk corn, and I was kind of here for it.
I'm like, he's making some valid points.
Scott is the guy in every meeting who has been like, this could be an email, Scott. I don't know why. We all know why we're here. We don't need to take up this time with the corn issue.
I don't care about the Seattle issue. I was here for that.
What about the corn? Cody wants to know. He's abruptly stopped, of course. Then we get a girl stand up and offer, what is going to be the counterpoint to Ellie's argument, and a very good one. Like, we just got decimated. We're lucky to still be here, and you want to send out 16 of our best on what is clearly a revenge/suicide mission that no one really says it, but I think is all in their mind.
Potentially.
And then something really interesting happens, because a guy named Carlisle stands up.
My guy, Carlisle.
Carlisle's Asian. Now, I don't want to, broadly generalize him, but usually Asian people would have a more Eastern way of thinking. But he gets up and he espouses a very Western civilization way of thinking, as he starts talking about forgiveness and mercy, and says, I'm not a Christian, but that always seemed true to me. This idea of you only end this cycle by offering mercy is exactly what I talked about last week, Cody.
You did. And I'm like, Carlisle, you beautiful idiot. You can't say that this early on, but he did. And it triggers one of my favorite guys now.
Oh, man.
He's back.
Yeah. And I wondered, like, for a minute there, I was wondering if there was significance of the actor they picked to do this, because I mentioned he's of Asian descent. Then we get Seth stand up, and I'm like, oh, Seth's about to go racist. Oh, no, Seth, don't do it. But he doesn't, thankfully.
He goes full vengeance.
But he does get mad, and he's speaking violently, like the actual speaking coming out of him is violent, and making a case of, hey, you can't let this stand. If we do nothing, they'll show up here.
He may be right.
And honestly, while we're pastors and we can sit here and say, hey, man, Carlisle has a point, and we can sit here and say, hey, Seth's just angry, but not all of that is probably wrong in this setting, especially with what we see of the WLF. Like, do you think they're just going to sit back and let 16, now 2 people roll into town and do some damage when if they know where they're from? No. they're gonna come back, and so Seth might be right.
I was just glad to see the Space Needle still standing.
Yes, good. Ellie gets up to speak finally after the outburst and her obvious surprise that it's Seth, the one that is coming to her aid, her defense. And she starts talking and she says, "It's not about revenge. I want justice. Do it for us. It's about us." First of all, she's wrong.
It's
Second,
not for Joel or Ellie, but for the town.
she's absolutely lying and everybody knows it. That's to sum it up.
Although she is speaking the correct verbiage if you are wanting a party to go out with you.
She does a very good politician impression.
She does. And I love how she's like, in the old way that you all grew up with, there was this thing called justice. And I'm like, oh, Ellie.
Yeah, in the end, they vote 8-3 to not send 16 to Seattle to find people and execute them. In the end, Jessie was right. She didn't do a good enough job concealing her anger. They know it's a front. Even though she does her best politician impression, they're not buying it.
I also wondered if what the other lady, and what Carlisle had said were more prominent issues that, like, oh, we need to rebuild long before we need to go seeking vengeance.
Yeah.
And then Carlisle's like, if we practice mercy, they might just be gone.
Well, let's just talk about the Old Testament for a second, since Carlisle's the one that brings it up. He's
my guy, Carlisle.
Yeah, Carlisle talks, he name drops Christians specifically, and you should know that when Ellie says this isn't about revenge, it's about justice, she's lying, she's wrong. That's not even close to how you would define justice in the Old Testament, Cody, where justice is meaning a making right of something that was broke, like making it whole again. And revenge never does that. We talked about that last week. It just leaves a bigger void.
Well, as long as the void doesn't end with us, Dave.
And it's one of the most realistic parts of the episode, the part you're talking about, because in a post-apocalyptic world where life is much harder, I think people would be much less likely to be cavalier with human lives in a cycle of retaliation.
Especially if you're in a community that almost is like the old way.
Feels pretty safe, comparatively speaking.
I saw what Seattle looked like. It was not safe.
Yeah, we moved to Gail drinking in the outfield of a kid's baseball game.
Go number 9.
Tommy joins her. I love that I about fell over because she's like, he basically kind of asks, well, how are you coping? She's like, well, I'm an alcoholic.
And smoke the devil's lettuce.
But you're not here because you're worried about me. Tommy's afraid Ellie is going to be reckless, and Gail basically says, yeah, you should be. There's this great moment where Tommy asks if Joel rubbed off on Ellie.
And no, he did not.
Yeah. Gail's basically like, nah, man, they're kindred spirits. She says, we give too much thought to the idea of nurture. It's nature. They're just this way. She's just Martin Riggs, baby.
So, yes, Gail speaks the truth throughout this whole thing. I love that Tommy brings up there's a difference between being a liar and lying, and Gail's like, she's a liar.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Which, this was an interesting little scene. Do we think, Cody, that Tommy will go after them? Because I think it's a little strange that he doesn't initially.
Well, I can chalk it up to not being aware that she's gone yet.
Maybe. There's a lot of chatter online, as you probably are aware of, as you've played the game a little, because this is a story change. In the game, it is Tommy who goes out with Ellie. In this one, it's Dina. And Tommy stays put. And that obviously changes where the story is going to go dramatically.
Potentially.
Some Last of Us fans are very upset. And Game of Thrones fans are like, first time?
This is my last time doing these shenanigans.
So it's Dina that shows up. She knows Ellie's up to something. Dina knows she doesn't have a plan. And they start plotting their getaway, with Dina being the mastermind. She's got everything they need.
Which there is a scene during this that harkens back to like episode 3 or episode 4 of season 1. So Ellie puts the gun in her back pocket, and Dina says the line about shooting her back end off. Not those words exactly, but that's the first thing that Joel says to her after she shows him the gun that she had, and she tries to do that, and he's like, "You're going to shoot your bleep off."
Yeah. It's this story's version of "you'll shoot your eye out."
Yep. And as soon as Dina said that, I'm like, "Aw, Joel said that."
Yeah. Yeah. But so this all happens really fast, by the way. They get everything together. They're going to leave Jackson. She's meeting Dina late at night at the gates. And lo and behold, who's helping them get out but Seth?
Seth, who we did not like at all.
Yeah.
But now he's helping at least continue the story.
Yeah.
So
Seth looks like a hard man. He clearly got injured. In fact, he references catching, quote, friendly fire on New Year's Day, which would have been the attack. He shakes Ellie's hand, presumably gives them some steak Sammies for the road, and Dina and Ellie leave Jackson. And we get this lovely sunrise at the cemetery 10 miles south of town. Gorgeous cinematography, Cody. Maybe one of the prettiest scenes ever in the show. Just really, really gorgeous. We get a couple of them back to back, though, because the scene where they come to Seattle is pretty cool, too.
The game they play after leaving the cemetery, where they name musicians or artists in alphabetical order, and Dina's like, "Wrong. Frank Zappa exists." And I'm like, who is naming Frank Zappa?
That is funny because the answers are just arbitrarily right or wrong based on her opinion.
Yes.
Also, I wanted to say to her, like, well, does Frank Zappa still exist in that world? Because I'm thinking he's probably pretty dead.
And also, Frank Zappa?
She was right about Guns N' Roses, though.
Fleetwood Mac. I would have been like, okay, I hear you.
Then we get this weird scene with them in the tent. It's weird because they get to Seattle like that, and the only pause we get is really for them to discover the massacre, and then this scene in the tent, which
my wife called exactly what was going to happen in the tent.
It feels kind of forced.
It does, but theoretically, you're going to have to discuss it sooner or later.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I agree, but it just felt forced in the narrative of this specific episode because we didn't spend more time with them on the road. I mean, the name of this episode is The Path, which I'm assuming has reference to their travel to Seattle, and yet it's very barely any part of the episode.
Maybe it is the path towards vengeance or the path towards grieving, because I mean there are a lot of paths that each character that we focused in on go, and like the only one that really doesn't get any flushing out's Dina. Dina's just there to be a good friend.
That's why I love Cody. He's always thinking, because he's right. That could mean a lot of paths in the episode. They come across the massacre of the Merry Men. Were they executed by the wolves? I thought Cody did a pretty good job of maybe defending that maybe it's not them, that maybe Dina knows more than she's letting on. Don't know. Certainly, it's like I thought they didn't kill defenseless people, but they certainly seem threatening by the end of the episode. And I do find it interesting that Americans would have the hardest time adjusting to this kind of world.
Yeah.
Where we just live in such a stable environment that like someone who lived in, say, the Sudan would, some countries that are much more unstable. They would be more used to this idea of like distrusting of every group you come along. Whereas this is a different kind of feeling for us as far as who can you trust in these groups.
I trust no one or everyone. It's an all or nothing.
But the Washington Liberation Front, they're armed, they're dangerous, they're clearly running the show in Seattle, and now Ellie and Dina are in the middle of it. The journey is only getting harder, and what's worse, it's clear that they're in deeper than they thought. This is a highly militarized group with lots of equipment. We see Manny manning a checkpoint, who is one of the group with Abby.
He's the one I really don't like.
Yeah, the one who wanted to kill Ellie there too.
Mm-hmm.
And we see multiple armored vehicles, lots of soldiers, and well, it's about to hit the fan, I guess, Cody.
Maybe.
It's maybe. I thought you had something else going there. Like you were going to get into it.
There's like supposedly a third season, so.
Oh, yeah.
We can't just abruptly end now.
Yeah. That's the end of the episode. We're left on that note. No Ellie's playlist because there's not really a song featured, but we should go straight to the pastor's corner. Cody, we see Dina come to try and connect with Ellie. She knows Ellie is going to go no matter what. She doesn't necessarily try to stop her, but there is a component of revenge that is explored here. I think the key to that scene is when Dina says, I loved him too, you know. And I mentioned this, I alluded to this earlier. There's something about revenge that's inherently self-driven. You wronged me, and now I'm going to share my hurt. So someone who's revenge-minded will subconsciously continue to isolate themselves.
And also justify their actions by any means.
Right. No one knows what I'm going through. You can't possibly imagine. But Dina here gives a Hail Mary attempt to sway Ellie from going in the only way that she can. A gentle reminder that she, and by proxy other people in the community, are grieving the loss of Joel as well. And I think the lesson here is this, is that we grieve the loss of relationship, but we lose sight that it was relationship that made us better to begin with. And there's a great line in another show I'm watching that Cody told me to watch called Shrinking.
Hey, you're finally doing it.
Where Harrison Ford says, nobody gets through this life unscathed. Not you, not me. But then you're left with a choice. Are you going to let your grief drown you, or are you going to face it and come out the other side? And I feel like the deep theme in this episode and this season so far is to listen carefully, friends. A quest for revenge is not facing anything. It's not courageous. You're still very much hiding in your grief. And I think that's what we see in Ellie in this episode. And the people around her who love her, who want to support her, but also are subtly trying to shift her.
Yes.
And I think that's what we saw this episode. Dina and Tommy trying to shift her. And even Gail to some extent.
Gail, she said a line that is hard for especially pastors to handle. And that is, not everyone can be saved.
Yeah.
And like Gail could read the writing on the walls that like this isn't something that's going to go away for Ellie like super quick. Like if she was in an involuntary setting, hospital, for a long amount of time, maybe you can then release her and then have her continue therapy for a prolonged period, and maybe we don't try to seek out the people in Seattle. But in all likelihood, without having those things, she is going to go on this path, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Is there hope? Is Ellie broken up beyond repair? In the 80s trope that we've compared her to, Martin Riggs, by the end of Lethal Weapon 1, is integrated into Murtaugh's family. He finds a new family. He's okay. He's able. But this is where the trope ends here in this story, I think, because I don't know if that ending is waiting for Ellie.
Although, you can argue, still by Lethal Weapon 4, he still does very reckless things, still doesn't like fully realize that his actions have consequences on others around him. And like, it takes him a while still to like fully get it.
Yeah. Rip. It's time for Rip. Cody, Today we're gathered here to honor the passing of the Robin Hood people.
The village.
The
Rejects.
village people? That doesn't work, man. Who I'm told by gamers are actually quite dangerous. So I don't know.
So I also wonder if maybe they're just a splinter group.
Yeah, it could be. They're the Seraphites, I think, in the game.
Oh.
They're referred to here as Scars, the Scars.
I refer to them as the village people.
There was no fun at the YMCA, Cody. Cody, who is your winner of the episode?
That'd be Ellie or Bella Ramsey.
The actress herself? Yeah.
Because she captures a wide range of emotions and I think justifiable responses that Ellie would go through with the passing of Joel, with all the townspeople being jabronis. And yeah, she carries the episode for me.
Yeah, it's really effective, her hiding of her emotions. She doesn't just do it with Gail, the therapist, to get out of the hospital. Remember, she's sobbing pretty uncontrollably when Dina shows up at her house.
Yep.
And she collects herself before she comes out. She can't even let someone who's that close to her see her grieving in that way. And I thought that was interesting and well played by Bella Ramsey. I'm going to go with Gail, the therapist. She's crafty, smart with the way she's trying to get information subtly through work. She's sad, but also she watches youth baseball games from the outfield while boozing to self-medicate. She's probably one of the most mentally healthy people in the apocalypse.
And yet, all those things she's doing, not super mentally healthy.
Nope, not at all. But the whole scene reminded me of the Will Ferrell SNL skit where he's yelling at his son at the baseball game. And he pulls out the cooler and cracks an adult beverage open. And the guy's like, well, it is 10 in the morning. And he's like, I just like to enjoy a snow cone while I'm watching the baseball game. I thought of that skit specifically. It made me laugh. Cody, who's your loser of the episode?
It's probably Carlisle.
Poor Carlisle, man.
He gets interrupted.
Carlisle's probably the only one speaking actual truth.
He is. And I honestly don't think that the reason the council kind of sided with him is anything he said. It's probably more what the lady behind him said, and that Seth had spoke out so angrily.
If this show was a character on that show, we would have been Carlisle. We'd have been like, listen, this is only a perpetual cycle of damage. We got to have mercy and forgiveness. And everybody like, shut up and sit down.
Yep.
My loser of the episode is the character of Ellie. I think this episode really highlights how out of control she is.
I mean, if she was thinking in her rational mind,
yeah,
she would see, oh, Seth's the only one that is sounding anything like me.
Yes. And I think maybe I'm giving the showrunners too much credit, but I feel like that's done intentionally again to give the audience this view of like, oh, he's the only one that agrees with you and we hate him.
We do.
And we see just how much she actually needs the people around her to keep her in check and possibly alive.
Yes.
Cody, how many steak Sammys out of 10 are you giving this episode?
A 7.5 or an 8.
Interesting. Okay.
Which I think is where I was last episode too. So we really don't do a lot of like, oh, I love Joel. It's just, we're moving on because that's what we do.
It was a weird episode for me, Cody, because I feel like the mission of the episode seems mixed and kind of all over the place. It was one of the first episodes I remember thinking, this reminds me of Daredevil Born Again. Like the pacing's weird. It was like they didn't understand where exactly they wanted to go with this episode. And it almost feels like you could have just got them. If you were going to go that quick, you could have just got them on the road quicker.
So it felt like a video game. The past 2 episodes have felt like a video game.
And maybe that's to be expected.
Like, I was okay with the pacing in both, but like if you want me to mourn the loss of Pedro, you got to give me a little bit more.
Yeah. I thought there were very good moments, but overall, I think it's one of the worst episodes of the series for me. Like, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
Woof.
Yeah. So there we have it. Episode 3, The Last of Us, brings us deeper into Ellie's grief, introduces the wolves, gives us some tough choices that are going to shape the rest of the season. What did y'all think? Is revenge ever really worth it? Or is Ellie walking down a path she's going to regret? Next week, we're even probably in for more twists and turns. Again, I'm not a game player, so I don't know where this is going. But be sure to join us as we continue watching the chaos unfold. Cody, any last words? That's a sigh.
That is a sigh. Be careful, wolves.
Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for all things Pop Culture Pastor and the podcast. We'll see you next time.